Awesome. Well, hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of
Sermon in the place.
No. All right. Well,
Sermon
hey,
up in
everybody, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Sermon.
Beyond the sermon.
Oh,
Golf clap.
Let's give it up.
Yes,
okay.
So we got people tuning in,
Yeah, man.
people watching.
This is our 100th episode.
Wow, we just
Congratulations,
hit
guys.
100,000
Come on.
subscribers.
That's amazing.
100,000
In faith.
subscribers.
Wow.
In
Let's
faith.
go. Yes.
Yeah,
In
just
faith.
hit that fundraise button.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
take
Soon I will
donations.
have to quit my day job. And,
Exactly.
You
We'll be
have-
like Mr. Beast.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
making
yeah.
billions.
But obviously we have to be similar to what he does. We just want to give money away.
I don't.
Man, that's how he does it, man.
let's just edit that part out.
You know,
Now
so
keep that in, just in case somebody asks me. No, I
was
need
honest.
it. I need the resources.
yeah. So man, it's a great day today,
Yeah.
and
It is.
y'all doing good?
Yeah, man. It's feels good. I feel like last week I was super tired and I got sick through the week, and then Sunday I woke up, I was just like, man, I'm so glad I'm not preaching today. Like
I felt the way too, man. I don't know if it was. So we're based out of Michigan. For those that are maybe tuning in from other places around the globe, so we're international.
International.
You know, if you're watching from Tokyo, Japan, what's up?
Hey.
I'll be right there. I want to visit. But the weather was so gloomy. I feel like that played a role in just how tired I was. But also I feel like it played a role on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Because, Dan, you preached, and I feel like you maybe even felt it from the stage. But I was like, man, like low numbers, low energy.
Our folks were definitely lethargic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yet, then service ends and everybody's just at the lobby. Yeah, what's up? So it's just like, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Is it us or is it
Is it us?
Jesus?
Right.
Like you
Is
just
it
you don't
Jesus?
like Jesus?
You don't
Is that
like
what
our
it is?
seats.
Wow.
We do
Okay.
need to upgrade.
We
Okay.
need to-
Maybe.
You know what I'm saying? You can send resources to Overflow Church at P.O. Box
732
732.
here in Benton Harbor,
Yeah.
Michigan.
I think maybe the chairs are too comfortable.
Maybe.
We can go back to those pews.
The pews.
Yeah.
The hard, stiff pews.
Or those metal chairs that every church I
Those
went
are the
to,
worst.
they were all not fully painted. They were
behind just numb.
rusty. Yeah. No.
And then you got to choose which cheek
Right,
you
right,
got
right,
to.
right.
They've been passed down from the first century in the early church.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's tough right there.
Yeah, first world problems.
Come on, first world problems.
But yeah, no, I could feel it too. I could feel it when I woke up. I was like, thank goodness I'm not preaching. And then I remembered that I am preaching.
I am.
But yeah, it was just something. I don't know. I mean, you don't want to over spiritualize things. I was just like, man, usually, I'm pretty hyped about preaching, and that was the first time in a while where I was like, boy, these blankets are nice and warm, and this pillow is soft, and
You know what? I think like also there's that lull that always hits, I think, after Easter. Usually like the week after Easter is like the lowest attended. People are just like, hey, I did my spiritual quota for the first half. The next time will be Christmas time, you know? And it seemed as if that like we pushed that back a week with Spring Spectacular because we had another great turnout. I think we had the two best turnouts as far as service-wise in Overflow history, from what I understand.
Felt really nice. What did we see? I think in between Good Friday and really the Holy Week, close to 700 people.
And then
We had about 681, 683, something like that we saw come through our doors that we connected with, and then
Spring Spectacular almost 500.
Yeah.
So like it was just it was a nuts. It was, I think people were burnt. not in a bad way. It's just like, man, like So I suspect that like this week will be a lot better. The weather's supposed to be better coming up. So
is it?
who knows?
better,
man.
I'm actually starting an entire lawn redo because I had some work done on my at my home, something with the sewer, whatever. So this team of plumbers came in and just ripped holes in my front yard, my backyard. So my yard looks a mess. So I'm gonna start dethatching.
Dethatching.
Start.
Oh, that's
Nice
real.
word.
You
That's
know,
deep, bro. That's
I
deep.
like
That's a
that.
deep cut.
That's a deep cut for
That's a
those
deep
that know. They know.
Those that know they lines. That's a deep
Hashtag
cut.
dethatching.
Hashtag, Kentucky bluegrass. What you know about that Kentucky bluegrass?
Hey man, that's real.
I just want to have a nice lawn, although it's a rental.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I wouldn't mess with that.
See, but look, this is where I'm like, okay,
Love your neighbor.
this is where I'm like, okay, I'll do it. One, I love to do yard work. I like just being outside and.
Yeah.
I can hook you up.
But hey, my landlord, do you have a dethatcher that I can have?
Probably.
Probably. Look around. But also, my landlord was like, "Hey, man, have at it. I'll cover the costs."
No.
So that's why I'm
okay.
like,
okay. Yeah.
So it's just a hobby at this
it's
point.
just it's just a hobby. So I'm gonna keep my receipts and then get reimbursed. And
there's something good about like when you can do something and you can start off. It's you have an idea in your mind and then you get done and you can say, hey, it's finished.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times some of the things that we do are just like ambiguous. We don't know if like, are we moving in the right direction? It takes time. So like I can get that.
Yeah.
Real quick before we jump into
I was gonna go preach. I was like, man, when you start seeing dead things come to life.
That's it. I was gonna before we jump into the meat of our podcast here, and the sermon. What I was thinking about when you were like, yeah, I was gonna start. I thought you were gonna say I'm gonna start a GoFundMe for the sun to come out. Like I was just like when we were talking about. I was like, yes, please, I will give to that. Like God, like it just feels like every time we get like a little glimpse, the temperature drops to 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
oh man, so yeah, man, you don't want to be out here dethatching in negative 20 degrees
while it's snowing.
No, I need my soil to be warm enough so I can also. Here's another deep cut for those that know.
Yeah.
I also need so that I can do a soil test.
Ooh, okay.
To see if my soil is
that
too
where you drink and swish a little?
Kind of, not really, but you get this kit and you get a little bit of you want to dig 4 to 5 inches deep.
Okay.
And you get some soil, you put it in this little container, and then you crack open this little powder, mix a little bit of water, shake it around, and then once it settles, the color of the water will tell you if your soil is too acidic or it's not, or if it's lacking nutrients. And then from there, you can then go to your local big box store and buy whatever nutrients you need for the regrowing of your lawn. But anyways,
this week on True Green.
Yeah, it's like, what's the name of our new podcast?
Right.
This week on True Green, is your grass healthy?
No. This episode is sponsored by True Green. Last week was Essence Grinders. Hey guys, please don't come for me. This is actually not sponsored by anything.
Oh my God, that's so good. Essence Grinder. Oh yes.
Essence Grinders.
Essence Grinder.
How do you gotta say it like that?
Essence Grinders. I feel like a little smooth jazz R&B.
Oh yeah. That's it.
We really don't know what the product is at this point.
We grow our coffee beans in the essence of goodness.
Yes.
Like, oh my God.
Wow.
All right, man. Take us to where we're
Okay,
going.
yeah. This is a great jump off point right here.
I love it.
Essence grinders and grass pH soils.
Yeah.
And
Oh, okay. Deep
Hey,
cut. Look,
okay.
He knows. See, he knows.
Yeah.
I watched a commercial or two.
Listen, that hat makes me believe that you know.
Right. You look like you know a thing or two
that
about
Michigan
lawns.
Great Lakes.
I
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Legit. No joke. You know what I saw? Oh, I'm sorry. I know we're about to jump in.
Listen, we got all the time in the world. This is our podcast.
That's right. Why am I apologizing?
They love this.
Yes,
People
yes.
love watching
Whatever we
us.
say, they will eat it up.
They eat it up. It has nothing to do with the sermon. I almost started watching Smokey and the Bandit. On it's on Netflix now.
Really?
Yeah.
Love.
Dude, that's a
Smokey and the
classic.
Mm-hmm.
Smoking in the Bandit. I didn't know that there's the song on there. So I know Eastbound and Down, but do you know there's a Westbound and Down? I went to the movie playlist, and I was like, "Yo,
soundtrack thing?
the soundtrack, yeah." And I was like, "What the heck? It says Westbound and Down. It's the same song, but it just says West."
They just changed it.
And then I remember I was like, "Oh yeah," because I was like, "Wait, he's going from Texas to Atlanta, so that's Eastbound and Down." When he goes back, it's Westbound and Down. That's stupid.
It was a little dumb.
Sells.
I guess, but is he going down?
We just need
Since he's already down, wouldn't it be westbound and north?
Is down actually
Or
even down?
westbound and up?
Yeah,
Is
it's all
down even down?
sideways.
Right? Or are we sideways?
Like, as I say, well, where's Atlanta? Okay.
Atlanta can't be that
Right?
much
Yeah,
north.
it can't be that. Where in Texas?
That's
though?
the question.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's North Texas, then it is
Wow.
eastbound. Okay.
So our next podcast is digging into Smokey and the Bandit. This will be
Here
a
on True
6-part
Green.
series.
Awesome. So we're going to
right.
jump off to, this was week 3
Week 3.
Week
of
3, yep.
asking,
Who is Jesus?
who is
Asking
Jesus,
for-
of asking you guys what series we're in. Let me finish, guys.
Well done.
Oh, flip it.
Well played. Yeah, total save right there.
Asking who is Jesus?
Asking who is Jesus? Asking what are the qualities in who he
Oh my
is.
gosh.
Oh my gosh.
And you kicked off week 3,
Mm-hmm.
and what was the theme?
Really took the whole week actually, but it was we're going through the 7 I am statements that Jesus makes in the Gospel of John. So this week it was Jesus saying, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness." And so to me, kind of like big picture for all this stuff that we dug into a little bit with the sermon is just how crazy it is that Jesus is making these statements. Not just like I'm the bread of life or I'm the light of the world, but the I am part there, like comparing himself to Yahweh and that sacred name that God revealed to Moses. And so to me, that was like an important part to kind of kick off with and look at. Just Jesus is claiming like divinity, he's claiming equality with God, he's claiming this really big stuff, and that essentially there is no life, there is no satisfaction or fulfillment apart from him. So maybe we could chat about that a little bit, just the craziness of Jesus making these claims of God, or even when Moses first gets that name from God, I am, and really like defining himself, like God in his own words, maybe for the first time when he says, I am that I am. And that's just, I don't know, it just hit me when I was studying and prepping for the sermon, just how crazy that interaction between Moses and God was.
Yeah. No, I think it is a not only a groundbreaking moment in the life of Israel, but you see them even going and changing, like not saying like basically stating like this name is so holy we can't even say it, right? They take out the vowels in there, so we don't even know actually like the correct spelling of that, or which could even give us like Yahweh is our best pronunciation of that word. Is that a word, pronunciation?
Pronunciation?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. But yeah, it is the best. It's the best way that we could say it, because they've taken it out because the name was so holy. That idea of who God is, that I am statement, Yahweh. And so yeah, man, I 100% agree with you. And then for Jesus to say that, like that is a major claim, right? In the first century, to Jews, for Jesus to say that to them in that moment, that's a big deal. So yeah.
And I think the thing that, with that name, so we talked a little about the story of like God reveals himself to Moses, like, hey, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, I've got a mission for you. He's like, that's great. What's your name? And the way that kind of hit me as I was praying through it is that really he's saying like, what kind of God are you? Like define yourself a little bit, because you were this God who was really present in the land of Canaan and blessed Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But since we've been in Egypt, it's like, where are you at? And so like, are you a God who is more than just this regional God for the land of Canaan? Like, are you a God? Like, define yourself. Why should we put our necks out there, resist Egypt and all that?
Yeah.
And so that's when God says, like, I am that I am. Like, you can't box me in. It's like the harvest God, the sun God, the moon God, the God of war. I'm the God over everything. And so I feel like Jesus is connecting himself to that when he makes these big claims, like, I'm the resurrection and the life. I'm the bread of life. I'm the light of the world. He's saying, like, I'm not just the God who's going to feed you one meal or a handful of meals. Like, I'm the God who's going to satisfy, like, your soul and the deepest longings of why you were created. So I just thought that was a cool connection.
Let me ask you something. As you were thinking about this sermon, because like it's so funny, just to kind of take people behind the scenes when we're working through these sermons. There's so much that's left on the cutting room floor, right? Because it's just like you only have about 30 to 40 minutes to to convey a message, and then you have to convey it in a way that people can grasp it and hold on to it. Because
Sure.
I think really the hope is that people will pick up their Bibles and follow these breadcrumbs that you've really laid out, that you've made a compelling enough case, and obviously that the Holy Spirit is at work in that. What were some things that you were like, even as you were digging into that, like you were like, man, I wish I could have unpacked this a little bit more.
Yeah. So there's a lot of imagery in John's gospel related to light and related to Jesus being light. And so definitely prayed through that and had a lot of notes about that, just kind of sifting through like, where do we go with this so that it's not like 2 hours long. So I think there's some really cool stuff there where it talks about, I think in John 3, like after that famous John 3:16, like for God so loved the world, etc. Jesus says after that, he says basically like he's the light of the world. He's kind of saying that before we get to John 8, and that his light exposes darkness, and that people basically are afraid to come into the light because they don't want to be exposed and have their lives laid bare. So that was one thing of like, let's not be afraid to come into the light.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to let Jesus totally expose our hearts, and that whole like surrender thing of coming to him. And then there's other stuff too, like in John 1, it's also talking about Jesus being the light. And it says the light is coming to the darkness could not comprehend it or overcome it, and that whole thing. So a lot of that imagery of light was stuff that I wanted to talk about, but there just wasn't a lot of space for it.
Yeah, and I think like, man, just to kind of hit home on that thought, I just think about like how many people are struggling in the dark, right? I mean, I just got that sense when I came up at the end of your sermon and we're just about to close with the benediction. It's just that feeling of how many people are just struggling in the dark, feeling the weight of their sin in the dark, feeling the weight of like, I'm not going to get out of here. And I think so many times church can also be a place where we can come and we can be hidden in plain sight because we're stuck under the shadow of the darkness. And like the invitation by Jesus to say like, man, like, step into the light,
Yeah.
But a lot of times we're afraid of that. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like we're afraid of that because we don't want to be exposed because like, if people see what we really look like in the light, they may not want to be around us. They may not want to be in relationship or they may think less of us, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Joel?
Yeah, I agree. I believe there's definitely a lot of people out there struggling with the idea of coming to the light and like allowing the Lord to speak into that because of just holding on to maybe a lot of things, and maybe just things in their lives that they're not proud of. But really, at the end of the day, the light brings forth freedom. It brings forth peace. And a lot of people maybe have never been in a place where they've experienced that. If anything, maybe there's some people out there that the light that they've experienced is a light of condemnation, a light where they've been actually negatively affected. And then when they come to church and on a Sunday, they're like, hey, like, come to the light. They're like, no, I did not ever have any. Now I'm gonna stay in the dark because the experiences that I've had with coming out to the light has been so negative that it makes no sense, or I have no, I can't trust that me allowing myself to be right, quote unquote, exposed or like coming to the light is going to be a thing that's going to bring me life.
No, I think that's a great point because
great point, yeah.
We expect one thing because Jesus we can trust.
Yep.
But then with Jesus people, we don't always get the grace and the freedom and the liberation that Jesus offers. So I totally
same
get
people
that.
in the church are the same, or there's also people in the church that are the same ones that will condemn somebody, but they'll talk and preach about come to the light, they'll find freedom, but yet you're not. Passing on that same love and that same safety that is in Jesus' light.
Yeah. And I think like you just to piggyback off of that that idea that you're talking about, Joel, is that even at the end of your sermon, you give that picture of the Lord of the Rings and these false lights that come out. And I think that's what that is, honestly, is those false lights, because it portrays itself like it is a good life, but there's, what do you find there but condemnation? What do you find there but, shame? What do you find there but, things that continue to taking you away from the path that God is calling us to? And the true light, it brings conviction, not condemnation, and the desire to run towards what God is trying to expose and clear. And there's love there. There's a gentleness, but there's also a truth there, right? For us not to stay where we're at. And like that's the thing, I think, like, how you can even test, the Bible talks about, test every spirit, like we know, like, hey, am I in a place where my heart is aligned with God, or do I always feel condemnation? Like this is not of God, because where God is, right, there's the light that wants to lead me, not drive me further into my darkness and further into my sorrow and my pain and my addictions and my all those different things, because that's not, if you're hearing the gospel and you're saying you're feeling like shame on that, then I would say, like, man, you are probably listening to a type of light that is not of God, that doesn't want good for you, but is actually destructive, and you need to kind of see, like, hey man, I might be lost in the dark woods right now. So yeah.
And it makes me think of, like, I don't remember if this is Jesus or Paul, but talking about, like, even Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. And we kind of see that in his temptations with Eve and with Jesus. Like, he seems like he's offering, like, a way of truth or a way of hope. With Jesus, he's even quoting scripture to him. Yeah. And so, like, you can see that, like, even in the church, it could have all the kind of facade of being, like, real light, because there might be scripture involved or some Christianese, like, language attached, but it might not lead to real life. And that's part of what Jesus says. That's interesting. He says, I'm the light of life. He says, I'm the light of the world. Whoever follows me will have the light of life. And I just find that interesting too. Like, it's a light that's supposed to, like you said, not condemn you and make you feel despair and hopeless, but it should make you feel like, even if it was painful at first, like, there's life, there's joy, there's hope, there's a way to move forward.
It's definitely something that wants to bring you into a new life, into a new season. And I love that. I love that we got a chance to talk about that this Sunday, because I think there's definitely a lot of people that have found themselves in those trails where they're following, but they just get off the trail and have a hard time finding the light, because they've seen other things and other places that seem like it's the right light, and really it just leaves them lost. Whereas the light that's in Jesus brings them to back to the trail, but also to just a new life, a life of freedom.
No, 100% agree. 100% agree.
I think a little bit more of that imagery of light that, like, was in my mind but didn't really have the space to go off of was even, like, in Genesis at the very beginning of creation. Like, that's the first thing that God says. It's his first, like, other than, like, it says the heavens and the earth he'd already created that. But the first thing he does is says, let there be light. And then, a few verses down, he separates, like, sun and moon, night and day. And even that idea of, like, Jesus says we're to be the light of the world. And then again in Ephesians, I want to say 8 or 5, it says, you once were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. And so, I don't know, maybe we could even talk a little bit about what does that mean for us to become the light as well.
Well, I mean, and even just before we get there, I mean, you go all the way to Revelation. What is like, there's these light images that are all throughout scripture. Like the sun is not there. It is the light of the Father that is, permeating, and there is no darkness. I mean, that's obviously imagery that's being communicated there, but it's that same, I think, idea, that same theme, right? And just even thinking about, like, in the text, like, what does light do? Light subdues the darkness. It is the dividing marker between what is, what can't be seen and what can be seen. So, like, so, like, what does that mean for us? That's a good question. Well, you preached a sermon. What does that mean for us?
Yeah. Well, one of the key things that, you can take out that one little verse from Jesus is he says, whoever follows me will not walk in darkness. And I think that following is important because like tracing back to the Genesis, the creation story, the sun and the moon, like the moon doesn't have any light in and of itself. Like apart from the sun, it's just an empty rock.
Come on. Yeah,
but when it's, in line of sight to the sun, then it can reflect this light and you can live by it at night. So to me, that's kind of the imagery is when we stay like where we can see Jesus, we keep our eyes on him and following him, then we can be that reflection of his light and his glory.
I love that. I think it's fascinating too that to even think that even the creator of earth, the creator of the universe needed light to create. One, he definitely used the light to subdue darkness, right? To say to kind of own that, but even the creator needed light to have clarity to create. And just I don't know, it's just a thought that I had. What do you think about that, Elijah?
No, I got
him. I was like, listen. I was trying to go somewhere, and I was like, listen. It sounds good in my head, but I'm like, man, I might have just hit
with the hot potato.
Save it. Give me something. I thought it was one of those, man, right?
Yeah.
It'll come to you.
Yeah, oh man, that was so good.
At the end of the day,
I feel like, man, listen, I think it was so deep
get a
that
flashlight.
I don't even want to mess it up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
See, I feel like it's a word for somebody.
It's a word for
that
somebody.
you needed to know that the Lord needed light to create. He said, "Let there be light," because I need to see.
I need to see
where
what I'm doing.
What I'm doing. I can't see
It's
nothing.
dark in here.
It's like, hold the
dark.
flashlight, son. Like, quit shaking it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Angel, come on, man. Where's the spotlight, bro? Really?
Hold that sun up over
Forget
here.
it. I got this. Let there be light.
Oh my gosh. Well, I will say this: like darkness represents chaos, right? So like even the waters is representing chaos. So like the Bible talks about how the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the face of the deep, and there was darkness. It was chaotic, right? And so I think what light does in a lot of ways is that it provides order to chaos. That's what we can say when we're saying subdue. It's providing order to chaos, and that's really what sin is.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I can see it.
I was just, hey, listen, man. I you know what I'm saying, second your second. You know what I'm saying? Like, I piggyback off that piggyback. You know what I'm saying? That's how people used to pray. You know what I mean? Remember that? Like, Lord, it's like, Lord, you know what I'm saying? I second what he was saying.
I want to confirm that.
I want to confirm what he said.
I want to affirm what he's
affirm,
saying. It's so good.
I want to pray for that unspoken. Lord, I want to add another unspoken to it. Yeah. No, but I think like all throughout the scripture, what happens is like this is the operating, modus operandi, you know what I'm saying, of this
another big word,
Latin,
of sin. It's like, man, what is the first thing that Adam and Eve do when they sin? They go and hide themselves. I think there's this imagery of like, let me get out of the light. Let me get out from where I can be seen into this dark area. And then all throughout the scripture, that's literally what's happening, right? There's a shame to the darkness. There's a shame to like, well, like, let me get out of plain sight and let me hide my sin. And yet God is trying to drag us back in. I think what's so beautiful about that passage is that actually before it, you have the story of the woman caught in adultery, right? And there's this beautiful imagery of like she is being tried to be exposed in a lot of ways. But the light of the world, which Jesus then makes claim of, and literally after this story in John's gospel, basically stands there and says like, well, wait a second, what sin has this woman committed that you haven't? And then he pardons her. He says, well, go and sin no more. The light doesn't excuse her sin. It sees it, but then it draws her onto the right path. And I think there's like very strong like symmetry in this, like that story as John is basically putting that towards this idea. And so, yeah, man, like I'm with it. Like where there's light, it doesn't take off. It doesn't lower the bar of responsibility or authority, but it doesn't also like expose in order to to shame,
Yeah, I think what's also beautiful about that story, just even the thought of, and maybe this is an encouragement for somebody out there, and hopefully you received this, that even in our darkness, the Lord finds its way in there and shines light and allows you to see clear, right? To see clear where you're at, but also gives you the opportunity to welcome His light to cleanse and kind of bring light back to your darkness. So like maybe this is somebody out there maybe feeling like, man, but I'm in the darkness. How do I get to the light? Hey, the light can also find you as long as you call out to it, as long as you acknowledge it, as long as you welcome it into your season of just feeling lost. It's not there to condemn you. It's there to convict you. And I think there's a beautiful thing about conviction, that it just it just gives you a second chance. It gives you that chance to like kind of redeem that place that you might find yourself in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
That makes me think a little bit of like Jesus talking to the Pharisees, and like he says this a couple different ways. Like, I've come to seek and save that which is lost, or I've come to heal those who are sick. And basically, like, you have to acknowledge that you're sick. Like, you have to acknowledge that you're in darkness. Like, these lights that are on, they dispel the darkness instantly. We can't deny it. But spiritually, like, if you don't acknowledge that you have darkness, like the Pharisees were around Jesus all the time. Lots of people were, but they wouldn't acknowledge that they had darkness. And so the light wasn't having that, like, healing effect for them.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other. So there's some people who know they're in darkness, but they're like, feel the shame and they're afraid because they don't want to feel more shame. But then I think there's other people who aren't coming into light because they're not even aware. There's too much pride. There's not enough humility.
So let me ask you this, maybe as we start landing the plane, what big takeaway that you weren't able to like give on Sunday, that you would like, which was on the cutting room floor, you just like, man, I just couldn't fit this in. What big takeaway would you want to land with that idea as people are thinking like, yeah, what does that mean? Like, what are other angles that we can look at this?
I'll be honest, I don't know if there's other angles than the ones that we've already covered that jump to my mind.
We've covered a lot of light.
We have a lot of light.
Yeah, I just think that emphasis, again, even going back to the Ephesians, which I could try and look it up later. I think it's 8:15 where it says like you were darkness, like you were just like total absence of light. You got Jesus like light with no shadow and no, what does it say? There's no shifting of shadow in God, like that kind of thing, like just total light. And we were total darkness. So really that big picture, like we had no ability to be our own light, but that's what Satan has tried to convince us since the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
That like we could be a light to ourselves, we could be a source to ourselves, and just that there's so much freedom and healing and like the releasing of that burden of trying to do it on our own.
Yeah.
When we come to the true light, the light of the world.
That's good.
Man.
There's freedom in the light.
Freedom in the light.
Let's write a song about it.
There's honey in the light.
And manna in the...
Wow.
Hey, listen.
It's hit me. Sorry.
You just. I was there.
I was there, church. Come on, sing this out, church.
Yeah. What are we singing?
Like the Lord wants to put a new song in all of you.
Yeah. I just need him
song.
to put a new grass in my lawn. That's what I need.
Come on. What do you call it? Thatching?
Full circle.
Dethatching.
Yeah, and
we don't want to thatch. We want to dethatch.
When do you rethatch is what I want to know.
And once I lay those seeds down, I need them to germinate.
Deep cut.
Deep cut. Listen. Well.
Yep.
See you guys next time.
Good word.